Hello and welcome. I am Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of this hour. President Donald Trump declares a golden age of America in his State of the Union address, defending his economic record amid sliding approval ratings. With Republicans fearing midterm losses, he credits himself with lowering inflation, cutting taxes and drug prices, and driving stock markets to record highs. Trump delivers his address amid falling poll numbers and a Supreme Court ruling that strikes down most of his signature tariffs. He largely sticks to the script but turns combative on immigration, trading shouted barbs with Democratic lawmakers. President Trump signals he may order military action against Iran, saying he will not allow what he calls the world's top sponsor of terrorism to obtain a nuclear weapon. Despite building up US forces in the Middle East, he offers limited detail on why such a strike would be necessary. Ukrainian negotiators are to meet US officials to discuss post-war reconstruction, including a proposed security package, Volodymyr Zelensky has said. Talks will also prepare for a possible trilateral meeting with Russia, which Kiev hopes to hold earlier in March. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrives in Israel for a two-day visit aimed at deepening strategic ties as US-Iran tensions raise fears of regional conflict. Modi, who made a historic first visit in 2017, seeks to build on growing defense and diplomatic cooperation with Prime Minister Netanyahu. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz begins his first official visit to China, pushing to reset ties and address strains on Germany's manufacturing sector. Meeting Premier Li Qiang in Beijing, both sides back free trade amid US tariff disruptions and sign agreements on climate and food security. The United Nations Security Council expresses deep concern over escalating violence in Sudan and calls for an immediate end to the fighting. The Council condemns drone attacks on civilians and aid workers, including multiple strikes affecting World Food Programme operations. Japan says it will deploy surface-to-air missiles to its western island of Yogaguni by March 2031, signalling a stronger defense posture near Taiwan. The island lies just 110 kilometers from Taiwan amid rising tensions with China. Those are the headlines. We start this hour in the Middle East, where India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on a historic two-day state visit to Israel. It will last from February the 25th to the 26th, and he has been invited by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The leader has now arrived in Tel Aviv and has been greeted by the Israeli Prime Minister and his wife Sarah. During the visit, Modi will become the first Indian Prime Minister to address Israel's parliament, the Knesset, solidifying the growing strategic ties between the two nations. He will discuss defense, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, cybersecurity, and other sectors with Netanyahu, and is expected to sign key agreements, including a defense cooperation deal. Modi will also pay tribute at the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial and meet with the Indian diaspora in Israel. A significant defense deal involving mid-air refueling aircraft for the Indian Air Force is also expected to be discussed. Joining us now is Colonel Sanjit Sarohi, an international relations and defense expert, joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
The Indian Prime Minister's second visit to Israel, his first was, of course, very significant. But what are you looking out for on this visit by the Indian Prime Minister?
Good evening, Thomas. Thank you very much for having me on the channel and discussing something very important. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has gone to Israel at the time when there are war clouds on the Middle East. And in spite of the opposition party asking him not to go, he has still made an effort to go to Israel at this point of time. Because this is very, very important. And besides most of the things which you have already covered, like defense and security, labor and trade, artificial intelligence, technology, and IMAC project connectivity, these are the main issues which are going to be discussed. And it is also being learned that Netanyahu, Israel, is also thinking of going in for hexagonal alliance with countries like Cyprus, Greece, and India, and other Arab and Asian countries. So I think this is also an important step, and this is basically against all those forces which are radicalized and which spread terror in the Middle East as well as in the Southeast Asian countries. So I think this visit of Indian Prime Minister to Israel after so many years is very, very important. And the most important thing about this is that Mr. Narendra Modi is the first Prime Minister of India who is going to address the Knesset. And it is a privilege which is honorably given to the President of America. So I think it is a great day for the Indian people and for Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi.
And what about that relationship between the Indian Prime Minister and his Israeli counterpart? Last time he made a significant visit in 2017, of course. Both leaders were seen sharing a moment in the sea, a bit of soft diplomacy there. What can you tell us about the direct relationship between the two heads of state?
Look, Thomas, firstly, let me make it very, very clear that India has got very, very good relations. And I think Israel is very, very trusted partner of India. And Israel also have a lot of trust in the Indian leadership. That is number one. And seeing their body language, you can straight away make out that they have a good rapport between both of them. So that is number one. As far as the government is concerned, Israel has always been very helpful to India, whether it was in United Nations or whether it was in Kashmir issue or whether it was between India and Pakistan. And Israel is always the first country to condemn any terrorist attacks in India. So I think Israel has got a special place in the heart of Indian people, and same is the case with Israel people also. And both the leaders are going to work out and they are going to discuss many issues, especially this US-Iran tension which is going on. And besides other bilateral issues, they will also be discussing the other alignments which are taking place, like Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Turkey, Armenia. So all these things will be discussed in great detail, and the outcome, I think, will be very, very positive, and we must hope for that. Thomas.
What is lacking on the roster is a greeting with a Palestinian leader. Are you surprised by that, given that India does recognize the state of Palestine, or is this a new stance by India?
No, this has been going on in India. There is no doubt, and Israel has accepted this fact that India has always been supporting Palestine, and they are still supporting Palestine as far as the two-state is concerned. But that is not going to come in between India and Israel relations, because both the countries, they understand each other limitations and each other problems. So I think Israel is not going to be this thing. There will be any roadblock because of the Palestinians. Thomas.
Yes, and of course, artificial intelligence was raised, something that the two countries are going to discuss. The artificial intelligence industry in Israel is booming. We've just seen the AI summit wrap up inside the Indian capital. You think the two countries can really work together on that sector in particular? What kind of developments do you think will be signed? We obviously saw a lot of high-ranking Israeli officials compliment India on its work in the artificial intelligence field here in New Delhi. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, Thomas, there is no doubt about it that the artificial intelligence has become a priority for any country, and especially for India, which is now trying to emerge as the manufacturing hub for electronic products and even semiconductors. And we all know that Israel is very, very advanced as far as the technology is concerned. And Israel is one country which is going to give the technology also, because there are very few countries in the world who share their technology. But as far as the India-Israel relations are concerned, Israel is very, very generous as far as giving technology to India is concerned. And Israel will go all out by helping out India in artificial intelligence, and that we have seen earlier also, and we will see in this visit also.
What are you going to expect from this trip overall? Lots of agreements signed, a lot of diplomacy, 2 days there for Narendra Modi. What would a successful trip look like for him?
Look, the successful trip, this thing will be beside bilateral relations on, I said, as on defense, security, labor and trade. Another factor which will come up is the labor mobility, which we have already signed with the European Union also, because of the war going on in Israel with Hamas for last 2 years. There have been scarcity of labor, so that mobility of labor will also be a priority. Defense will be a priority, trade, artificial intelligence, technology, and another thing which I want to bring out is that is the IMEC project connectivity, because after the Hamas attack on Israel, this project has been slightly slow, but now as the peace has returned in Gaza, so I think Narendra Modi is going to go in for this connectivity as early as possible, because as we all know that the Suez Canal is very, very disruptive. Anytime the Houthis, they attack the Red Sea. So if we have this corridor which will go through Israel and reach Europe, so I think that will be better for India trade and for export and import, especially after this India-European Union free trade agreement. And the other thing is this alignment which I was talking about, the hexagonal between Greece, Cyprus and India and any other country, which may not be liked by the Saudi Arabia, Turkey and other countries. But I think a lot of things will come up and we have to see, and we will see a lot of things coming up. And this trip is going to be very, very successful. Mere fact that this trip is being organized when there are war clouds on the Middle East. So I think it is very, very important, and let's hope for the best. Thomas.
Okay, Colonel Sirohi, do stay with us as we turn over to another development, a related one, in fact. And meanwhile, while this is all occurring, fresh violence erupted in Gaza as the Israeli army killed a Palestinian and injured several others, breaching the ceasefire. Gazan medical sources reported that the victim's body and those injured arrived at Nasser Hospital following an Israeli drone strike on a group of civilians in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. The northern Gaza Strip saw a Palestinian wounded by Israeli fire near a shelter for displaced people in the Jabalia refugee camp. Additionally, Israeli fighter jets launched airstrikes east of Gaza City, and artillery shelling occurred in various parts of Gaza, including northern and central areas. No immediate casualties have been reported from these airstrikes or shelling incidents. This comes amid ongoing violence, with a report revealing Israel's responsibility for the majority of journalist deaths globally in 2025. According to the Committee to Protect Journalists, a record 129 journalists and media workers were killed worldwide in 2025, with Israel reportedly being responsible for 2/3 of the total killings. Let's take a listen in to what the CPJ's Chief Programs Officer has to say on the issue.
That's right. In the case of Gaza, just in 2025, we were able to confirm that at least 47 of the killings were clearly targeted. That means they were targeted because of their journalism. It's not easy to get to that level of evidence, so there might be more cases that we're not unable to assess to that level of certainty, but there are two main responses. One of them is lack of accountability. There are not even proper investigations of the circumstances around these killings. Second is mere campaigns. So it's a way of smearing the journalists that have been killed, probably as a way of justifying their killings. So, but that's the response, unfortunately, that historically Israel has given to the killing of journalists.
Colonel Sanjit Sarohi joins us once again. Violence continues on the enclave, showing the sheer fragility of this ceasefire, Colonel. But I want to focus in on those reports that we just heard. We know that over 200 journalists have been killed during the entirety of the war. We've seen journalists even being killed post-ceasefire. What does this mean for journalists and the trust that they have in the Israeli state when it comes to the treatment and the transparency of how they intend to cover this war?
Well, Thomas, this is a fact that the Israelis, they make no bones about it. And whenever there is any threat to their soldiers or their state, they always act very ferociously, and they have been acting like that. Whenever there is some strike by any Palestinian on Israeli soldiers, so Israel immediately takes off, and they, either with the help of the drones or with the fighter jet, they strike. And unfortunately, this killing of the journalist has been taking place because it is very, very difficult to identify from the air that who is the enemy and who is your friend. So I think these types of casualty, they take place in a war. But since the fighting in Gaza have been very intense, and especially from the Israeli side, so there is no doubt that 2/3 of the journalists who have been killed maybe have been killed by the Israeli. So you cannot trust anyone. And once the war starts off, then it is very difficult to identify that who is journalist and who is not. So this is very, very unfortunate. And I think the Israelis, they are aware of it. But point is that their aim is to eliminate Hamas from Gaza. And till then, they will not stop. And as and when they find any excuse of Palestinian firing at them, they will keep on firing. So this ceasefire is very, very fragile. And this is not going to, although lots of efforts have been put in to make it permanent, but I think there is a mistrust between both the Palestinian or the Hamas and the Israeli. So all these types of killings will carry on in the future also. Thomas.
Yes, Colonel Sarohi, thank you very much. Do stay with us once again as we turn to further tensions coming out of the region, where tensions between the United States and Iran have reached a dangerous height, with officials on both sides warning of a possible military conflict. Sources in the Gulf and Europe say diplomatic efforts to end the standoff over Iran's nuclear program are quickly fading. Israel, believing the stalemate between Iran and United States is now unresolvable, is making preparations for potential military action, including possible joint strikes with the US. Regional officials fear a military confrontation could spiral out of control and threaten Middle East stability. President Trump has warned Iran that failure to reach a deal will lead to really bad things, while Iran has threatened retaliation against US bases in the region. The US has begun moving warships and aircraft carriers to the Middle East, raising alarm that a military strike could be imminent. Colonel Sarohi joins us once again on this. Of course, tensions continue to rise between Tehran and between Washington, with an updated statement coming out of Donald Trump today in that State of the Union address, saying that military action very much is a possibility. However, diplomacy is favoured in this matter. Could I get your point of view on what possibly could occur and transpire in these events, in these Middle East tensions?
Look, Thomas, now the talks are going to take place tomorrow as planned, and once this talk take place, then only we'll come to know. But there are 2 to 3 things which we are very, very clear about it. The requirements or the demands of United States to Iran are partially acceptable to Iran, but on few issues, Iran is not going to get this thing, bow down to their demand. And the first one is the enrichment, 0% enrichment of uranium. Iran will not accept this because then that means in future also they cannot use the nuclear energy for their own requirement, and that is, I think, that is incorrect demand as far as the United States is concerned. Second point is that they demand of already enriched uranium, that is 60%, which is already being held by Iran. So Americans want that this should be exported or should be given to some other country, which Americans will decide. That also I don't think Iran will accept to that. The third is the missile cap program. Iran is not going to accept. Yes, as regard the supporting to the proxies like Hamas, Hezbollah and Houthis are concerned, Iran may concede to these demands, but I think these conceding only 1 or 2 demands is not going to satisfy Mr. Donald Trump. And I think the military option will be the only option left after tomorrow. And there is no doubt about it that both these parties are trying to buy time. Americans are buying time to build up their military assets in the Middle East, as the Garrett Fold is also advancing in the Mediterranean.
Yes.
And the Iranians are also trying to deploy their missiles, especially they are seeking missiles from China, as well as the reports are that they have taken some missiles from Russia also. So that we will see. But I think in next 1 or 2 days, because the way the statements are coming from J.D. Vance, Vice President Donald Trump, and Steve Witkoff. Earlier they were calling that Iran will take about 2 years to make the nuclear bomb. Now Steve Witkoff has said that it is just 1 week away from making a nuclear bomb. So that 1 week, we have to understand that 1 week means that within 1 week America is going to strike Israel. I don't think there is any doubt about it. Thomas.
Okay, Colonel Sirohi, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, we'll be keeping tabs on that situation here on the channel. We now turn over to the Indo-Pacific, where China has said that the Shen Yun classical dance group, which has been linked to a bomb threat against Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, is by no means a normal cultural activity, but rather than a political tool used by the Falun Gong movement to spread cult information and amass wealth. A bomb scare at Albanese's home originated from the written threats directed at a Chinese dance and music group banned in Beijing, according to reports in an email seen by local media and other channels. The performers of the Shen Yun group were told to cancel their upcoming Australian shows or risk explosives being detonated at Albanese's official residence in the nation's capital. Meanwhile, Miao Ning, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson, has responded. Let's take a listen in to what she had to say.
我注意到了有关报道，不了解真实的情况。中方一贯反对各类暴力袭击行为。必须指出的是，所谓神韵演出根本不是什么正常的文化活动，而是法轮功组织传播邪教信息、聚敛钱财的政治工具。近年来，所谓神韵艺术团对其员工系统性虐待、非法用工、精神控制的恶行屡遭曝光，希望各界保持警惕。
Andrew K.P. Leung joins us now, an independent China strategist joining us live from Hong Kong. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us on this interesting story. What more can you tell us about it and what might transpire out of these events?
Well, first of all, this is much more than a dancing troupe. This kind of performances have been going on for decades. And of course, if you look at these performances, they're about culture, about history. But then one has got to look at where this dancing troupe within quotation marks sprang from in the first place, and then what's the organization behind it. First of all, it was related to the Falun Gong movement. Falun Gong in Chinese means spinning wheel, spiritual spinning wheel. If you Google, if you look at Wikipedia, there is a very detailed description of the Falun Gong movement. The movement happened about over 20 or decades ago, and ostensibly it was led by a leader who is a godlike kind of figure, and also parading the Buddhist principle, a kind of religious belief of reincarnation. And also there is a reference to extraterrestrial in space, that kind of beings. But of course it highlights the normally accepted virtues of compassion and all that. So behind all that front is also an organization, the media organization called the Epoch Times, EPOCH Times, which again has been going on for a long, long time. And it is a media outlet, not only in around Asia, but also in the United States and elsewhere, parading anti-Beijing rhetoric. And the leader of this movement resides in New York. So against all this background, and of course that there was, when it first happened in China, it engineered a movement surrounding the Beijing's, the Zhongnanhai, it is the headquarters of the Chinese Communist Party. And so against this background, it's no surprise to hear the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman saying that this is in fact is a cult-like kind of movement, but behind it all is a very strong anti-Chinese movement backed by the Epoch Times. Now, this bomb threat is again a kind of devious tactic to smear China, because obviously this movement was banned in China and won't be able to have these performances, but by parading this bomb threat, it tries to blacken China and also cater to the Chinese suspicion elements in these host countries, and hoping to draw more reception of this dancing group. Okay. So that's the backup.
Yes, indeed. Andrew, I'm very sorry we have ran out of time for this hour. Thank you so much for taking the time in talking to us. We do have some breaking news, though, coming in. And the second edition of the Global Simud Flotilla is set to depart on April the 12th, aiming to break the blockade against Gaza and defend the Palestinian people's rights. The flotilla, comprising of over 100 ships and participants from more than 150 countries, will sail from Spain and other Mediterranean ports. The participants will not only carry aid, but also include healthcare workers, educators, and infrastructure teams, also lawyers and war crimes investigators. Over 1,000 medical professionals are expected to join the effort to provide much needed assistance to Gaza. In addition to the sea mission, 2 land convoys will also move towards Gaza to open a humanitarian corridor, one starting from the Maghreb region and the other from South Asia. Finally, we turn to Europe, where thousands have gathered in Trafalgar Square in London to mark 4 years since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The memorial remembered those who lost their lives in the war, with Ukraine's ambassador Valery Zaluzhny addressing the crowd. According to reports, the United Nations General Assembly passed a resolution supporting Ukraine's borders and condemning Russian attacks. The resolution was reportedly adopted by a wide margin, reflecting global concern over the ongoing conflict and its impact on Ukraine's sovereignty and safety. Let's take a listen in.
We remember, and we will always remember. You and your people will be written about the history textbooks in Ukraine and beyond. the United Kingdom has once again taken its historical place. Trafalgar Square has witnessed many historical moments. Today, it witnesses unity. Unity of people who believe in freedom. Unity that is stronger than fear. Ukraine survives. Ukraine fights. Ukraine will win. Thank you.
Every day there are attacks, so people should not forget this. There are drone attacks, kamikaze drones, there are missile attacks. So people are attacking, well, Russians are attacking our infrastructure, our civilians. So nobody is really safe. So it's not just war, it's also war crimes.
But that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international updates.